Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Thank you so much. I am so happy to be here. I'm changing my view so that I can see all of you. Looking around, I just love you. You all are so beautiful and precious. I love my family, my queers. So thank you so much for having me here. Loving it. So today to talk about something that's been kind of on my heart as of late, and just kind of really looking at the truth of what it is that we're doing in this practice. Uncovering what is here in our hearts, what is here. How often do we really do that? Like, just acknowledge what you're carrying. Acknowledge it, really. What you wake up with, what you go to sleep with. What is it that you are walking in? So sometimes looking at the truth of what's here is difficult. It's not always easy. And sometimes that what we are doing when we are looking at the truth and uncovering, pulling the covers back, sometimes we are touching into what I'm calling sorrow. It looks like sorrow. And there's a deep sorrow, I think, that we sometimes carry. In fact, I think probably most of the time, underneath all of it, there is a sorrow in the world. The world kind of has, these injuries, these challenges, these harms floating around, and we feel it. So we talk a lot about dukkha in this practice, or suffering. But do we ever really acknowledge the very real and resounding sorrow that is present? I just want to acknowledge that. I don't know if it's related to our love for the world, if it's related to our longing for happiness, for connection. But if we look deeply, we might see that it has come to us along generations from the past. This sorrow. So how do we work with it? What do we do with it? It's a really big question. A lot of people come with this question. How do I get rid of this? How do I deal with this when it comes up? Thich Nhat Hanh, the great Zen master of our times, says that we are only truly alive when the mind is with the body. So, turning toward, being with. We spend a lot of time turning away from our suffering, from our discomfort. I know that I do. Certainly, any difficulties in the body arising from past traumas. We don't want any part of that. We definitely tend to turn away or close off. So difficulty being with sorrow, deep sorrow, suffering, with the intensity of our pain and moving through our traumas. This is pervasive. It is pervasive. In this practice, the convention has been that we sit and meet our difficulties, yes? That we look deeply with compassion and kindness, right? And that we tend to our challenges. We turn toward, we find a clear path, right? With clear sight, clear seeing. That's the convention. Most of the time, under many circumstances, this is the stuff that works, that helps, it's supportive. That's the medicine. But there's also an intense anxiety and discomfort that can come up for some of us, brought on by a traumatic experience. And what's interesting is that most of us, especially in this family year, have brushed up against or touched trauma in some way, whether it's in our personal lives or through someone close to us. So everybody, deep trauma is pervasive in today's societal system. So I want to acknowledge that. Some of us have been so deeply impacted by difficult events that mindfulness is hard. Being present in the body is difficult. So being with it or going to meet our pain at times, our suffering, our stuck energy can be triggering. And we can be thrown into a very real and physical sense of overwhelm. It happens. This kind of trauma stays in our bodies, and it's locked up, in a sense, in the nervous system. And so it continues to arise, continues to come forward. Anything but that, right? So we tend to stay closed off from it. We don't want it to arise because it's difficult. So being with deep sorrow or deep pain is like this, with suffering, with the intensity of our pain. We want to move through it. We want to move through our trauma. We want to come out the other side. We want to be free. We want to be happy. Yet it's there. So how do we fully embrace the fullness of our experience? Like I said, these harms have come to manifest through us, through our lives, through our family systems. They come long generations, and there's not really any way to take them out of the field, right? This is how karma works. This is how our unfolding works. There's another Zen master. He was around in the mid-century here. He made a statement in the 60s. His name is Taekwondo. This is a little deep. This is a little so I just want to warn people. It's somewhat impactful. This monk, he self-immolated, and some of you may be familiar. There's a famous image of a monk on fire in the streets. And he did this for a couple of reasons. He did this for political reasons. At the time, he did it to protect Buddhism. He did it to protect religious freedoms and to draw attention to the issues there in his country. And he also did it. There's a Buddhist tradition of um, taking on the karma of others to relieve the suffering, taking on the suffering yourself to relieve others. And so he was also uh, participating in that tradition. The Dalai Lama says, do not do that. So it's said that he sat down in lotus position and poured gasoline on himself and lit himself on fire. And he didn't cry out. He sat chanting the sutras. And when his body became, so burned and charred and, too damaged to support itself, he collapsed. And he reached out one arm and pushed himself back up in flames and resumed chanting. The real deal. This practice, sitting in the fire, touching the heart of suffering, touching our sorrow. We can do this. We have the capacity. We have the capacity. So going deeply into the heart of suffering, it's difficult, it's painful. Yet, the wonderful miracle about touching our difficulties, being with the intensity of our challenges, is that this is where compassion is born. The seeds of compassion are there in the heart of sorrow. This is where it blooms. What we are doing when we're getting in touch there is that we're getting in touch and holding a sorrow that is bigger than our own. It is bigger than us. And so a compassion also grows that is bigger than our individual suffering. It's a compassion for the sorrow of humanity, for the sorrow of the world. And so there's an intergenerational thread that carries with it a tenderness, and the tenderness of our collective wounding. And this wounding manifests in our lives from past generations, from past harms, because the karma from those harms is all around us. We are eating it, we are consuming it, we're ingesting it, we're watching it on TV, we're scrolling through it. And these harms are this moment permeating the fabric of our lives together. What's happening in Ukraine is happening to everybody. The unfolding from those harms remains in the field generations. So it will manifest through the hardships that will be carried on and come out sideways in all kinds of ways. So this tapestry, this web of which we are all a part, touches each of us. You can't walk in this world without meeting yourself in some way. Um, our actions, our character, we have immense impact. So when we are willing, when we are able, because we are not always able, and that is okay too. We can open to it, and we can get in touch. We can get down beneath everything. We can see it. We can touch it. We can finally feel it. We don't really ever, we don't like to allow ourselves to feel that. It's powerful and it's deep. And if we are willing to open to it, it is there, and there's nothing more to do at that point. When we can open to that sense, when we can open to that depth, that feeling, there's nothing more to do at that point but to weep. You will find that we weep and we weep and we weep with compassion. Compassion for the world. Your heart can hold that. Compassion, we can actually stop identifying with the stories. We can stop identifying with the stories that can bring us into that state of contraction, that state of overwhelm. In actuality, it's much bigger than we are. Some of us may be working with addiction, all forms, whatever form it may be. Some of us may be prone to anger or even violence. Each of us may be in touch with any manner of afflictions. But they have come to us through generations of harm, suffering, and sorrow. On a very deep level, these are not our own. These are not our own, not ours alone. So yes, we are working with them. We are transforming. We are the vessel right here, deep within. The fires of transformation are burning. So, not ours alone. Drop the stories, drop the storylines, and open as much as you can to what is here, to the sensations that actually are present. If it's grief, can you hold it as the grief of the world? Grief arising out of the conditions of the world. So we don't need to grab onto it as our own. So, in touch with sorrow, in touch with compassion. And we can do this. I'll read you a poem. This is a poem called The Place Where We Are Right. I like this, by Yehuda Amichai. Right as in okay. For the place where we are right, flowers will never, from the place where we are right, flowers will never grow in the spring. The place where we are right is hard and trampled like a yard. But doubts and loves dig up the world like a mole, a plow, and a whisper will be heard in the place where the ruined house once stood. But sometimes we need to allow the not okayness to come through. And this is our mulch, our breast the composting box. So, of course, in this life, we have moments and times of exquisite joy and happiness. And this life is full of wondrous experience. Thich Nhat Hanh also says, the essence of our practice can be described as transforming suffering into happiness. Essence of our practice can be described as transforming our suffering into happiness. So, what's interesting is that happiness is a conditioned thing, meaning it's often fleeting or impermanent. So, I'll read you a bit more from Thich Nhat Hanh. He says, we all want to be happy, and there are many books and teachers in the world that try to help people be happier. Yet, we all continue to suffer. Therefore, we may think that we're doing it wrong. Somehow we are failing at happiness. That isn't true. Being able to enjoy happiness doesn't require that we have zero suffering. In fact, the art of happiness is also the art of suffering well. When we learn to acknowledge, embrace, and understand our suffering, we suffer much less. Not only that, but we're also able to go further and transform our suffering into understanding, compassion, and joy for ourselves and others. So, I love Tai. So he lays out 5 practices for nurturing happiness, because we actually have to nurture it and tend to our happiness, because it's a conditioned thing. If we don't tend to happiness, um, you know, we tend to get mired in our suffering. So I'll share these 5 practices with you. I have them. Let's see if my screen sharing will work. Yes, it does work. Here they are. So the first practice for nurturing happiness is simply letting go. Letting go. And he says there is a kind of joy that comes from letting go. So we can do this with our lines of thinking and repetitive thoughts. We can do this by just coming back to the body. We must train ourselves. Don't follow the storylines. Do not follow them. Be with the sensations. Sometimes strong sensations of anxiety or fear or sadness, or whatever. But if we let go of the storylines and go to the body, go to the sensation, something interesting happens. So I encourage you to experiment with that. Something interesting happens. We can also let go in many other ways in this life. It's a kind of renouncing that we do as we become more clear-sighted, just kind of natural loosening of our grip. Many of the things we believe will bring us happiness do not actually bring us happiness. And so instead, they bind us to suffering and unhappiness. We can become aware of this, and when we do, we just naturally let go. So we learn to look deeply into our desires and attachments to discern what leads to suffering and what is supportive, what is healthful, what is beneficial. And upon seeing clearly, this is what we do. So the next practice for cultivating or nurturing happiness is inviting positive seeds. And he says, we each have many kinds of seeds lying deep in our consciousness. Those we water are the ones that sprout, come up into our awareness, and manifest outwardly. This is true. This is so true. So, nurturing what is positive, we can spend day in and day out mired in our suffering. We roll over in despair again and again, and guess what? It grows. It grows. So, we must bend our attention to what is positive. We must bend our attention to what is positive. We let go, and then we replace. We replace that impulse that likely leads to more suffering with something positive, beneficial, supportive. I like gratitude, the gratitude practice. And it's really cool when you can do gratitude practice with a live person, like just send a text or an email or even a phone call, because then you're just filled with that for a time. There's an actual exchange happening energetically, and it's a positive seed that you can just replace. We have these habits of mind. The mind goes in its ruts. We gotta bend the mind to positive things, and we can replace with anything that works for you. The next practice, the third one, is mindfulness-based joy. And he says, mindfulness helps us not only to get in touch with suffering so that we can embrace and transform it, but also to touch the wonders of life, including our own body. Then breathing in becomes a delight, and breathing out can also be a delight. Mindfulness-based joy. So with mindfulness, we can open to the conditions that are all around us, already all around us, that are already supporting our well-being, already supporting our happiness. We can open to the here and now, where we have, you know, the opportunity to engage whatever we'd like. We have choice. We have power. Um, we can engage the aliveness with aliveness, and we really can begin to discharge and leave behind our own patterns. Leave them behind. We have choice. The fourth is concentration. So he says concentration is born from mindfulness. Concentration has the power to break through, to burn away the afflictions that make you suffer, and to allow joy and happiness to come in. So there are many things in our lives that will arise all around us. Our relationships, whatever they are, they're ready to take us away, right? Take us out of our present moment experience, right back into our habitual patterns. So mindfulness leads to deeper concentration, and concentration helps to stabilize us in the here and now, so we don't get so caught up by all of these things that are flying around in our lives. And when they do happen, we can skillfully acknowledge them um, when they arise, but we can more easily return to what's here, return to what's real. Yes? Concentration, stabilizing energy that we develop through our practice, mindfulness. And the fifth practice for cultivating happiness is insight. He says, with mindfulness, we recognize the tension in our body and we want very much to release it, but sometimes we can't. What we need is some insight. So with mindfulness and concentration, we can look deeply into things and uncover what is needed, what is actually needed, what is healthful, and what is beneficial for us. Um, an example, I've been working with anxiety. I work with anxiety. Sometimes it comes up for me. And I one day I just noticed that I had so much tension in my body. I was like, oh, I'm having a sense of anxiety. Like, what is this? And I realized that I was having anxiety around aversion, some aversion that I was having. And when I looked deeply, this is where mindfulness comes in. I looked into this aversion and I realized that I was having some aversion around a strong desire I did not want to be having. And this was bringing up all this anxiety for me. And so, this strong desire that I didn't want to be having, I looked underneath that to see what the deeper need was. What is it anyway? What am I trying to fill? And I looked into the deeper need, and I'm able to nourish that need. That is the difference between a beneficial um, desire and maybe one that leads to more suffering. So insight can help um, us nurture our happiness. So in this way, we can nurture happiness for ourselves, but we got to tend to it. We got to tend to it. So looking into the heart of our sorrow can lead to an overflowing compassion for ourselves, for the world, a compassion that is greater than us, to freedom from identifying with all of these ails that manifest through us. Can we hold them in a different sense? So with kind attention, more happiness grows, aliveness, joy. I'm going to read you one more thing here. This is from the book. This is from Jack and Joseph, Seeking the Heart of Wisdom. Let's see. For genuine compassion to arise, it is necessary to reverse the conditioned tendency of avoidance and to open-heartedly experience the full range of our human condition. And they give some examples from a monk that lived, I believe, in the 18th century, named Ryokan, and some poetry from him around the 10,000 joys and the 10,000 sorrows, and embracing the fullness of the experience. And it's just so beautiful. So I will read you some of his poems. Once again, the children and I are fighting a battle using spring grasses. Now advancing, now retreating, each time with more refinement. Twilight. Everyone has returned home. The bright round moon helps me to endure the loneliness. The autumn nights have lengthened and the cold has begun to penetrate my mattress. My 60th year is near. Yet there is no one to take pity on this week-old body. The rain has finally stopped. Now just a thin stream trickles from the roof. all night the incessant cry of buzzing insects. Wide awake, unable to sleep, leaning on my pillow, I watch the pure, bright rays of sunrise. Oh, that my robes were wide enough to gather up all the suffering people in this floating world. So I will stop there. We have some time. So I would love to just open it up. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear anything that you'd like to share around how that lands, how um, your experience with um, this topic, how it resonates, how it manifests for you. I see Tom. Hello.
Hi, thanks for such a balanced talk. I really appreciate the balance between looking at our suffering and sort of bringing about joy. Because I think, I don't know, maybe it's my experience. In Buddhist circles, we tend to focus so much on compassion and getting in touch with the suffering of the world and ourselves and all this stuff. It can become pretty dour. um, and I just like I've been hanging out with some friends who are in Nichiren group, and so they chant the Lotus Sutra, but it's all about setting an intention to improve the life condition of oneself or others. And so they tend to be like the more joyful Buddhists I hang out with.
Nice.
Because they're focused on the positive, like where are we heading? What can we do? Just like you said, the suffering and the harm leaves a ripple in its wake.
Yes.
Well, so does the positive that we do. And so um what was the what were those five, not the list, but what was the title of that group from Thich Nhat Hanh, those five practices for
Nurturing happiness.
nurturing? Okay, I got it right. Because those I'm going to keep I like the fact that they're all brought together
Mm-hmm.
in one place. We hear about gratitude practice, we hear about these disparate things, but I think it's a really good list. And so I'm going to go back to that.
Lovely.
But I just wanted to ask you, is there anything you recommend to keep, to help ourselves maybe incline towards the positive and the happiness? Because I remember reading, I'll paraphrase this quote: joy is not self-indulgent, it is the ultimate act of courage and defiance.
Indeed.
So anyway, what do you do to help incline yourself more towards the positive?
Well, thank you so much, Tom. That's beautiful. I love um, I love the inclination, toward intention, towards planting seeds, and that's what this is all about. That's what this the intention of this talk is all about. Embracing um, and nurturing those elements in our lives. I was just reading Ajahn Chah, the great Thai forest master um, in our lineage. And I was reading a short little pithy thing from him, and he was saying that the entirety of our lives, we get down to it, is suffering arising and passing away. Every last thing, suffering arising and passing away. And so, and if we look at, I suppose, if we look at our experiences and attachment, desire, and all of these things in terms of maybe dependent origination or whatever, yes, I suppose that rings true. And so, engaging the here and now, this is where we are powerful. And this is where we really our practice comes into play because we got to be aware of it. We got to be aware of when we are mired in our ruts and our patterns, um, that bring us into these emotive states. And it's not even an experience, it's something that we are creating, we are manifesting. Those are the seeds that we are watering if we don't pay attention. And so paying attention, waking up to it, that allows us to go um, in whatever direction that we would like. For me, it's many things. It's trees, it's relationship, it's cooking, it's things, it's gardening, it's all of these things that can bring me into my happy place. And we have many ways of walking in joy, experiencing joy. The simplest thing for me right now in this moment is gratitude, and I can be gratitude just for grateful just for the earth that I'm walking on. I can start there, in the support that I'm receiving in this life, which is beautiful, wondrous, mysterious, and crazy. Yeah. So just bending the mind. Thank you so much, Tom. I appreciate that. I saw a hand.
I
Hello, Juan. I see Juan.
Thank you, Sarah, for your talk. I I wanted to thank you especially for sharing your personal history with how you brought the fifth element insight to your practice. As you were describing your relationship with desire, it felt very much like how I struggle um, with my attachments, and usually it takes a form of wanting more extreme experiences in my life, either through some recreational drugs or through sex. And I, I guess I always try to bring the letting go part into it, but I never thought about this um, nurturing what I'm really longing for in those moments.
Yes.
Um, and I love that. And I imagine that for most of us, this longing has to do with something like the feeling of connection or of belonging, right, to the reality around us. And I was wondering if you could share a little bit more on how you bring that nurturing to those moments.
Thank you, Juan. Oh, this is really good. This is a good inquiry. How do we do that? This is what each of us, on a very deep level, desires and craves and needs as humans. We want connection. We want to belong. We want friendship. We want community. We want to be held. We want to be seen. How do we cultivate this? So, I don't have a magic pill for that, and certainly not for everyone. And I'm working on it for myself. Um, and I'm, here, this place where we are with our glorious pandemic. I'm trying to get it in while I can, and I'm waking up to, how can I engage? How can I grow friendship? How can I engage community in ways that are nourishing for me? Um, so I'm just starting to do that, and hopefully, may it continue. May we be able to, continue walking around, being human, and loving and touching each other. So thinking about that, we think about that for ourselves. You got to think about that for yourself. What ways can you nurture and grow positive connection for yourself? I have a friend who loves poetry. She started a poetry group. That's wonderful. She has all these like-minded people. She's got a lot of connection going on there. It's cool. I'm envious. I started doing martial arts recently with a community, and that's been fun for me. It's cool. I like it. Different ways. I don't know. Who knows what will come of it? I drum. I like the drumming community. So just thinking about ways of cultivating connection. I think one of the most profound things that we do on this planet as humans is connect and connect with each other. And, you know, that feeling of deep connection, man, nothing like it. Whether it's with an old friend, we still got them, a new friend, a family member, whatever it is, that feeling is beyond. It's just beautiful to connect, to be seen, to be held by another being. So, opening to it and receiving to it, actively cultivating connection. Thank you so much, Juan. Let's see, Marcelo.
Yes, hello. And also, I got a lot of gratitude for the talk. I mean, yeah, suffering definitely always is always very central, and also connection, of course. So I could go on about that, but basically, to keep it simple, step number one, letting go. I mean, it just sounds so simple and so
Yeah.
clear. And to me, I mean, I just want to like, what does that even look like? It's just sometimes I wonder, is that even like a conscious decision I can make? Or because, yeah, there seems to be a lot of craving, unconscious craving on holding on to the actual not letting go, the opposite of it, right? Clinging to the thoughts and the whole story. So, yeah.
I got you. Thank you, Marcelo. Yeah, this is good because this is where we are. This is what it's like to be human. We spin around. Um, I like to think of it as opposed to letting go. Like I don't want to think about letting go. It's hard to let go. When I think about it, it's coming here. So I just bring my attention here. I'm not concerned with letting go. I'm concerned with coming here to the body, coming here to what is real. There's a three-step thing that I do while I'm walking around in the world, whatever it is that I'm doing. When I notice myself, um, I say release, but it's really coming back to the body. Step one, just come here, home to the body. You got to acknowledge. That's the second thing. We acknowledge where we were, acknowledge what happened because we don't want to close. Just allowing, acknowledging. You feel it, and then go back to what you're doing. Go back to what is real. You just practice that. It's just like meditation. It's just like a little puppy. We got to be patient and kind. Again and again and again. We're going to go back constantly. But our habits change. If we are kind, gentle persistence, we have to be kind and compassionate with ourselves. It's not easy, this work that we are doing. We kind of appreciate ourselves and have gratitude for engaging this work. It's warriors' work. On these hearts, turning toward, being with. And so acknowledging that, give yourself some credit, pat yourself on the back, and be compassionate. Sometimes it sucks to be Syra. It's hard. Just a little bit of compassion, and just coming back to what is real. What is here? We do it again and again, and that conditioning grows. It grows. Before you know it, it's just cake. It's kind of cake sometimes. We're not. It is. Yeah. Thank you, Marcelo.
I guess does anybody in the Bartlett Street have any questions or comments? Okay. Yeah, Jeff.
Thank you, Lyra, for a wonderful talk. I'll speak up. I really liked how balanced your talk was, and you also referred to happiness as a transient state, right? Happiness is impermanent
Yes.
versus suffering, which is also impermanent.
Yes.
Do you think there's a place, how would you define happiness then?
How would I define happiness?
Yeah.
Expand.
Expand?
Yes. What do you mean exactly by that? Define happiness. Happiness is, I'm certain it's relative, so I'm not sure.
Right. I mean, I personally think of it as a deep sense of well-being.
Ah,
Um, it's not happiness as in elated or euphoric or, um, all positive. It's a way of holding the 10,000 joys and the 10,000 sorrows, and in the midst of it having some equanimity, I guess you could say.
yes. Nice. There, you've defined it for yourself. It's just wonderful. I love that. Um, that way of looking at well-being, equanimity. Um, Beautiful. It's beautiful. I would say, there is definitely some happiness in well-being and equanimity. Um, yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I guess we're at time. So just a reminder that you can get more information about Syra at projectroot.org.